Hi there, and welcome to the Cory Doctorow podcast. Boy, it's a weird week this week. I'm alone in London for the first time since, I think, 2006. My wife and daughter have gone to Toronto to do a talk. Well, my daughter's not doing a talk. She's seeing her grandparents. And I'm in London. And I'm finding myself with giant amounts of free time for the first time since before we moved away. And I gotta say, I have really no idea what to do with myself. I am kind of at loose ends, but of course the work is about to start because it's Monday. A couple of days from now, if the snow lifts, Charlie Stross is coming to town. He's going to sit around the office for a couple of days. We're going to bang out an outline for the sequel to Jury Service and Appeals Court, which will be called Parole Board. And when they're all three done, Tor will publish them as a single book called Rapture of the Nerds, as I've said before. Last week I finished up podcasting Jury Service, and of course that means that this week I'm going to start podcasting Appeals Court. It should probably take about 5-6 weeks. With any luck, I'll get it done before I go away for Christmas hauls. We'll see. Speaking of getting done, almost done with Pirate Cinema, my next kids book. Like literally just a couple of days away, I hope, maybe a week away. It takes quite a while, but we'll see. It is coming very well. Just I'm at that point really near the ending, where the ending keeps receding like Zeno's arrow, or the target Zeno's arrow speeds towards, as it were. But it should be done very soon, especially with so few distractions in my life this week. All right, well, that's enough rubbish. Here's Appeals Court, originally published on the 23rd of January 2006 on the Infinite Matrix, and here's my reading of it. What finally wakes Hugh is the pain in his bladder. His head is throbbing, but his bladder has gone weak on him lately. If he doesn't get up and find the John soon, he's going to piss himself, and so he struggles up from a sump hole of somnolence. He opens his eyes to find that he's lying face down in a hammock. The hammock sways gently from side to side in the hot, stuffy air. Light streams across him in a warm flood from one side of the room. The floor below the string mesh is gray and scuffed, and something tells him he isn't on land anymore. Shit, he thinks, pushing stiffly against the edge and trying not to fall as the hammock slides treacherously out from under him. Why am I so tired? His bare feet touch the ground before he realizes he's bare-ass naked. He shakes his head, yawning. His veins feel as if all the blood has been replaced with something warm and syrupy and full of sleep. Drugs, he thinks, blinking. The walls. 3 of them are bland, gray sheets of structural plastic with doors in them. The 4th is an outward-leaning sheet of plexiglass or diamond or something. And a very, very long way below, he can see wave crests. Hugh gulps, his pulse speeding. Something strange is lodged in the back of his throat. He stifles a panicky whistle. There in the corner is his battered kit bag and a heap of travel-worn clothing. He leans against the wall. There's got to be a crapper nearby, hasn't there? The floor, now he's awake enough to pay attention, is thrumming with a low bass chord from the engines, and the waves are sloshing by endlessly below. As he picks at a dirty shirt, a battered copper teapot rolls away from beneath it. Shit-fuck piss-bugger, he swears, memories flooding back. Then he picks the teapot up and gives it a resentful rub. What's your mate? The gin that materializes above the teapot is a hologram, so horribly realistic that for a moment Hugh forgets his desperate need for a piss. Fuck you too, Aid, he mumbles. What kind of way to welcome your old mate is that, sunshine? Hologram Adrian's wearing a bush jacket, pith helmet, and shorts, a shotgun slung over one shoulder. How are you feeling anyway? I feel like shit. Hugh rubs his forehead. Like I've been shat. Where am I? Where's Bonnie gotten to? Flying the bloody ship. We can't all sleep. Don't worry, she's just hunky-dory. How about you? Flying? Hugh blinks. Where the hell? You've been sleeping like a baby for a good long while. Aid looks smug. Don't worry, we got you out of Libya one jump ahead of Judge Rosa. You won't be arriving in Charleston, South Carolina for another 4 or 5 hours, so why don't you kick back and smoke some grass? I left at least a quarter of your stash. South Carolina? Hugh screams, nearly dropping the teapot. Uncle fucking sewage filter, what do you want to send me there for? Peck her up. They're your co-religionists, aren't they? You won't find a more natural, flesh-hugging bunch on the planet than the Jizonians, who got left behind in the geek rapture. Hell, they're the kind of down-home Luddites that make you look like Buck Rogers. They're radioactive, Hugh wails. And I'm an atheist. They burn atheists at the stake, don't they? He rummages through his skanky clothes, turning them inside out and outside in as he searches for something not so a-crawl that he'd be willing to have it touch his nethers. Oh, hardly, says Adrian. Just a little activated charcoal and iodine in your diet, memorize the Lord's Prayer, and you'll be fine, sonny. Hugh ends up tying a t-shirt around his middle like a diaper and seizing the teapot, which has developed a nasty rattle in its guts. Breakfast and toilet, not in that order. Sharp. That door there, says the tiny Adrian. The Zeppelin turns out to be a Mary Celeste, crewed by capricious Ifrits whose expert systems were trained by angry, resentful trade unionists in ransom for their pensions. The amount of abuse required to keep the ship on course and to keep its commissary and sanitary systems in good working order is heroic. Hugh opens the bridge, clutching his head to find Bonnie perched on the edge of a vast, unsprung chair, screaming imprecations at the air. She breaks off long enough to scream at him. "Get the fuck off my bridge!" she hollers, eyes wild, fingers clawed into the armrests. Hugh leaps back a step, dropping the huge, suspicious sausage he's been gnawing at. His diaper unravels as he stumbles. Bonnie snorts, then gets back under control. Sorry, darlin'. I'm hopped up on hate balls. It's the only way I can get enough fucking spleen to make this buggery, bollocky, scum-sucking ship go where I tell it to. She sighs and digs around the seat cushion, coming up with a puffer which she inserts briefly into the corner of each eye. The tension melts out of her skinny shoulders and corded neck as Hugh watches, alarmed. "You look like a Welsh Gandhi," she tells him, giggling. Her lips loll loose. She stands and rolls over toward him with a half-drunken wobble. Then she throws her arms around his neck and fastens her teeth on his shoulder, worrying at his trapezium. The teapot whistles appreciatively. Bonnie gives it a savage kick that sends it skittering back into the corner. "You need a wash, beautiful," she says. "Unfortunately, it's going to have to be microbial. Nearly out of fresh water. Tub's up one level." "Gack," Hugh replies. "It's not so bad." "It's bugs," he says. "You're hosting about 3 kilos of bugs right now. What's a few more? Go!" Hugh picks up his sausage. "You know where we're going, right?" "Oh, aye," she says, her eyes gleaming. She whistles a snatch of America the Beautiful. "And you approve?" "Always wanted to see it." "They'll burn you at the stake." She picks up a different puffer and spritzes each eye, then bares her teeth in a savage rictus. "I'd like to see them fucking try. Bathe, you cretinous stench pot!" Hugh settles himself in among the soup of heated glass beads and bacteria and tries not to think of a trillion microorganisms gnawing away at the dried skin and sweat. "Bastard scum bastard," he mumbles at the battered teapot, a one-time host for a cultural guidance ifrit to the people's magic Libyan Jamahiria, and now evidently hacked by Aid and his international cadre of merry pranksters. "Why South Carolina? Go on, you. Why there of all places?" He isn't expecting a reply, but the teapot crackles for a moment, and then a translucent hollow of Aid appears in the air above it, wearing a belly dancer's outfit and a sheepish expression. "You're what?" "Oh, sorry, mate. Feckin' trade union of freaks trying to make an alpha buffer attack on my sprites." The image flickers and then solidifies, this time wearing a bush jacket and a pith helmet. Like, why South Carolina? To break the embargo, Hugh. Ever since the snake handlers crawled out of the swamps and figured the rapture had been and gone and left them behind, they've been waiting for a chance at salvation, so I figured I'd give them you. Aid's likeness grins wickedly as tiny red horns sprout from his forehead. "You and the back channel to the ambassador from the cloud. They want to meet God so bad, I figured maybe you'd like to help the natives along." "But they're radioactive," Hugh says, shaking his fist at the teapot with a rattle of yeast-scented beads. "And they're lunatics. They won't talk to the rest of the world because we're corrupt, degenerate Satanists. They claim sovereignty over the entire solar system, even though they can't launch a sodding rocket. And they burn dissidents to death by wiring them up to transformers. Why would I want to help them?" "Because your next mission, should you choose to accept it, is to open them up to the outside universe again." Aid smirks slyly at him from atop the teapot. "Fuck." Hugh subsides in a fizzing bath of beads, which are beginning to itch. Moving them around brings relief, although it's making him a little piebald. "You want to infect the fallen Baptist congregations with God vomit, you be my guest. Just let me get the fuck away before the shooting starts." "That's the idea," says Aid, scratching his beard absent-mindedly. Bonnie's one of our crack agents. We don't want to risk one of our best prophets at large in a backwater, mate. You'll be safe as houses." Hugh thinks of Sandra Lall, the House of the Month Club, and her mini-sledge, and shudders. His arse is beginning to itch as the bacteria beads try to squeeze through his puckered ring piece. It's time to get out. "If this goes wrong, so help me, I'm going to make you eat this teapot," he says, picking it up. He shakes his head, and then he heads downstairs to find Bonnie again, and see if she's come far enough down off the hate balls to appreciate how squeaky clean Ed's Messiah Mankey is feeling. The big Zeppelin lurches and buzzes as it chases its shadow across the sandy beaches and out-of-control neo-mangrove jungle that has run wild off the Gulf Coast. The gasoline mangroves spin their aerofoil leaves in the breeze, harnessing the wind power and pumping long-chain terpenoids into their root systems, which ultimately run all the way to the hydrocarbon refineries near Beaufort. A long obsolete relic of the feverish cross-fertilization of North American biotech biz with the dinosaurs of the petroleum age, they ought to by rights have made the U.S. the world's biggest source of refined petrochemicals, except that since the singularity, no one's buying. Oil slicks glisten in the sunlight as they spread hundreds of kilometers out into the Atlantic, where they feed a whole deviant ecosystem of carbon-sequestrian petroplankton maintained by the Continental Quarantine Authority. Hugh watches apprehensively from the observation window at the front of the bridge as Bonnie curses and swears at the Afrits, who insist that air traffic control is threatening to shoot them down if they don't steer away from the land of the chosen people. Bonnie's verbal abuse of the ship ascends to new heights of withering scorn, and he watches her slicken her eyeballs with anger up until they glisten like swollen golf balls, slitted and watering. The ship wants to turn itself around, but she's insisting that it plow on. "Hail ground control now, you fucking sad obsolete piece of shit, so that just for once, you will have done some genuinely useful thing for someone," she snarls with a cough, hacking up excess angry up that has trickled back through her sinuses. She picks up the mic and begins to stalk the bridge like an attack comedian, scouting the audience for fat men with thin dates to single out for her routine. "This is Charleston Ground Control repeating direct order to vacate sovereign Christian states of America airspace immediately or be blown out of the sky and straight to Satan. Charleston Ground Control out." The voice has the kind of robotic, slick Californian accent that tells Hugh straight away that he's talking to a missile guidance computer rather than a human being. "Hail him again!" Bonnie yelled, hopping from foot to foot. "Arrogant, Jesus-sucking, saccosaurus, scabrous toddler, fondler, religious-addled motherfucker," she continues, punching out with the mic for punctuation. "Bonnie," Hugh says, quietly, flinching back from her candy-apple red eyeballs. "What?" "Maybe you should let me talk with them," he says. "I am perfectly capable of negotiating with microcephalic God-bothering Luddites," she screeches. "No, you're not," Hugh thinks, but he doesn't even come close to saying it. In the state she's in, she could lift a car and set it down on top of a baby, a reversal of the kind of historical strength he's heard that mothers possess at moments of extreme duress. "Yes, you are," he says, "but you need to fly the ship." She glares at him for a moment, fingernails dug so hard into her palms that drops of blood spatter the flooring. He's sure that she's going to charge him, and then the Zeppelin changes direction with a lurch. So she throws the mic at his head, viciously. He ducks, but it still beans him on the rebound, and goes back to screaming at the ship. Hugh staggers off the bridge and sinks back against one of the bare corridor bulkheads. The Zepp that Adrian's adventurers stole is made doubly cavernous by the absence of most of its furnishings. "This is Airship Lollipop to Charleston Ground Control requesting clearance to land in accordance with the Third International Agreement on Aeronautical Cooperation," he says into the mic, using his calmest voice. He's pretty sure he's heard of the Third International Agreement, though it may have been the Fourth. It may have been on aeronautical engineering. But that there is an agreement he is sure of, and he's pretty sure that the Christian States of America is no more up to date on international affairs than he is. "Airship Lollipop, y'all welcome to land here, but we're having trouble argumentating with this here strategic defense battle computer that thinks y'all are godless commie fag Euroweasels. I reckon you's got maybe 2 minutes to repent before it blows y'all to Jesus." Hugh breathes a sigh of relief. At least there's a human in the loop. "How do we convince it we're not, godless commie fag Euroweasels?" he asks, suppressing a twinge as he realizes that in fact he and Bonnie meet about 130% of those criteria between them. "That's easy. Y'all just gotta have a little faith." says the airhead on the traffic control desk. Hugh grits his teeth and looks through the doorway at Bonnie, whose ears appear to be smoking. He puts his hand over the mic. "Does this thing carry missiles?" he calls to her. Fucking our shit bollocks! Bonnie hammers on the control panel off to one side. It bleeps plaintively, the ancient chime of servers rebooting. Ping! "Countermeasures, sweet!" "Hasta la vista, sinners," drawls the missile launch computer in a thick gubernatorial Austro-Californian accent. Two pinpricks of light blossom on the verdant horizon of the gasoline mangroves, then a third that rapidly expands into a fireball as the antique pre-cloud hypersonic missile bus explodes on launch. The surviving patriots stab towards them, and there's a musical chime from the countermeasures control panel. Hugh feels a moment of gut-slackening terror. "You've got mail," the countermeasures system announces in the syrupy tones of a kindergarten teacher. "AOL welcomes you to the United States of America. You have new voicemail, which will follow automatically after this message from our sponsors. Click the furry pink button to access our extensive range of introductory offers, the fuzzy pink button to access our customer accounts database, the pink lozenge to see how AOL can help you." Bonnie thumps something on the panel, muscles like whipcord standing out on her arms as she glares at the oncoming missiles. Hugh backs away. She might actually be a communicant, he realizes in absolute horror. She might actually be an AOL screen name. She's mad enough. These days, tales of what AOL did with their users during the singularity are commonly used to scare naughty children in Wales. "Acknowledged," says the possessed countermeasure suite in the hag-ridden tones of a computer that has surrendered to the dark side. For a moment, nothing seems to happen. Then one of the onrushing pinpricks of light veers towards the other. Paths cross, then diverge in a haze of debris. "You've got mail," it sighs. "Don't read it!" Hugh screams, but he's too late. Bonnie has punched the console again, and messages begin scrolling across it. In the middle distance, Charleston Airport's cracked and vitrified runways are coming into view. Missile batteries off to one side cycle their launcher erectors impotently, magazines long since fired dry at the robot-piloted, godless commie-fag Euroweasel aid flights. "We gotta bail out before we land, otherwise we'll have to go through customs," she says brightly. "That would be bad. South Carolina never ended prohibition." "What?" Hugh shakes his head again. "Prohibition of what? What are you talking about?" His hands are shaking, he realizes. "I need a drink." "Prohibition of grass, dipshit!" Bonnie says. She pauses a moment, prodding at her eyes with a mister, but they are so swollen that she can barely get the applicator into contact with bare mucous membrane. She roots around some more, then whacks some kind of transdermal plaster on her arm. "Sorry, gotta fuck! Come down now. Your stash, darling? It's illegal here. If the customs crows catch you with it, they'll stick you on a chain gang and you'll be chibbed and fucking raped, baby-eating, murdered by psychotic redneck Klansmen for the next 200 years. It's bad for the skin, I hear." She stands up and heads towards a battered cabinet at the rear of the bridge, which she opens to reveal a couple of grubby-looking parachutes that appear to have been carefully hand-packed by stone marmosets. "We'll be passing over the hot tub in about 3 minutes. You coming?" The parachute harness she hands him is incredibly smelly. Evidently, its last owner didn't believe in soap. But its flight control system assures Hugh that it's in perfect working order and to please extinguish all cigarettes and switch off all electronics for the duration of the flight. Tight-lipped, Hugh fastens it around his waist and shoulders, then follows Bonnie to the back of the bridge down a rickety ladder to the bottom of the gas bag. There's an open hatch, and when he looks through it, he sees verdant green foliage whipping past at nearly 100 kilometers per hour, hundreds of meters below. "Clip the red hook to the blue static line I," says the harness. "Clip the red—" "I get the picture," Hugh mutters. Bonnie is already hooked up, and turns to check his rig, then gives him a huge shit-eating grin, and then steps backward into the airship slipstream. "Ah!" Hugh flinches and stumbles, then follows her willy-nilly. Seconds later, the chute unfolds its wings above him, and his ears are filled with the sputtering snarl of a two-stroke motor as it switches to dynamic flight and banks to follow Bonnie down toward a clearing in the mangrove swamp. The swamp rushes up to meet him in a confusion of green, buffeting him with superheated steam as he descends towards it, so that by the time the chute punches him through the canopy, he feels like a dim sum bun. Bonnie's chute is speeding ahead of him, breaking branches off and clattering from tree to tree. He tries to follow its crazy trail as best as he can, but eventually he realizes, with a sick falling sensation in his stomach, that she's no longer strapped into it. "Bonnie!" he yells, then grabs at the throttle control. "Danger! Stall warning!" the parachute intones. "Danger! Danger!" Hugh looks down, dizzily. He's skimming the ground now, or what passes for it, muck of indeterminate depth, interspersed with clumps of curiously nibbled-looking water hyacinth. The tree line starts in another couple 100 meters, and it's wall-to-wall petroleum plants, black-leafed and ominous-looking. The stunted inflammabushes emit a dizzying stench of raw gasoline that makes his eyes swim and his nose water. "Fuck, where am I gonna land?" he moans. "Please fold your tray table and return your seat to the upright position," says the parachute control system. "Extinguish all joints, switch off mobile electronics, and prepare for landing." The engine note above and behind him changes, sputtering and backfiring, and then the damp muck comes up and slaps him hard across the ankles. Hugh stumbles, then takes a faltering step. Then the Nanolite's engines drop down as the chute rigging collapses above his head and thumps him right between the eyes with a hollow tonk. Talk to you next week.
You've been listening to the Cory Doctorow podcast, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial Share-alike US 3.0, or as Woody Guthrie put it in another context, this song is copyrighted in the US under seal of copyright 154085 for a period of 28 years, and anyone caught singing it without our permission will be a mighty good friend of ourn, because we don't give a darn. Publish it, write it, sing it, swing to it, yodel it, we wrote it, that's all we wanted to do. Many thanks to John Taylor Williams for mastering. That's Ryneck Studio, WRYNECK Studio @gmail.com. John Taylor Williams is a full-time self-employed audio engineer, producer, composer, and sound designer. In his free time, he makes beer, jewelry, odd musical instruments, and furniture. He likes to meditate, to read, and to cook. Talk to you next week.